my friends are simps.
If you're watching this video, then chances are that you're already familiar with a Japanese company called Sonicware. They produce a number of delightfully interesting portable electronic instruments, including groove boxes, synthesizers, and samplers. Each of these has got a very strong key theme or central concept, such as the Live and Lo-Fi 12, which is reminiscent of an old 12-bit Akai sampler, or the Liven Mega Synthesis, which is inspired by the Sega Mega Drive sounds. In some ways, they're kind of like a similar idea to the Korg Volca series, but they have their own kind of unique take on the whole mini groove box genre. Now, I have had my eye on these devices for quite some time, and recently Sonicware agreed to send me over their Liven Texture Lab to play about with. I've spent the past few months tinkering and seeing what I can come up with, and I'm finally ready to give you some of my kind of initial thoughts. The Liven Texture Lab is a 4-voice polyphonic hardware, granular synthesizer, sequencer and effects box, which lets you sample, dissolve and then rearrange all these sounds into entirely new creations. Granular synthesis can be a bit tricky to get your head around, but effectively in practice it involves breaking down your samples into fragments, which are called grains, and these are then reconstructed or played back in a variety of creative ways. As you can probably guess from the name, this approach lends itself especially nicely to creating lovely textural soundscapes. Whilst granular synthesis is fairly popular, there isn't a huge number of affordable, standalone hardware options out there. Most of the alternatives are either purely software-based or come in the form of fancy Eurorack modules like Instro's admittedly incredible but premium R-Bar. And so the price and feature set of this device in particular means that it is especially interesting. The Texture Lab itself is pretty chunky in size, but also lightweight and portable, constructed out of plastic. In many ways, it really does kind of feel like a toy. However, by that, I don't mean to suggest that it is low quality. And in fact, I kind of mean the opposite. If you think about it, good toys are designed to encourage you to get hands-on and interact with them. And more importantly, perhaps, they are fun to play with. It's in this sense that the Texture Lab really feels toy-like, as there is a kind of considered tactility that invites you to experiment. The buttons are big and solid, and the case has this matte finish, rather than the shiny type of plastic that you find on cheap consumer electronics. It's kind of difficult to explain, but the UI and UX feels very accessible as a result of all of this. Something which I think is especially important when it comes to a concept as potentially complicated as granular synthesis can be. When it comes to connectivity, all of the controls and connection points of the Texture Lab are found on the main front panel, including mini jack sync input and output, full-sized DIN MIDI jacks for input and output, line input and output on mini jack for audio, and a mini jack stereo headphone output. There is also a nice bright display and a built-in speaker. Somewhat bizarrely, the speaker doesn't automatically switch off when you plug in an audio cable to the outputs, so you have to do this manually. Power is supplied either via 9-volt center positive DC connection, which I believe is the same size and type as the Korg Volca series, or with the use of 6 AA batteries, which also serve to give the unit a wee bit more heft. It would have been nice to see USB power on there as well to save having to use up yet another wall socket, but that's just a minor thing really. Now there's a bunch of really cool built-in presets in here from various sound designers that you can experiment with, and these do a really good job of showing off what the device can do. They're also a really great starting point to explore and at least to try to understand the various granular controls that you've got. These include, but are not limited to, the number, length and starting position of all the wee grains, as well as the speed, pitch, playback direction and stereo spread of them. The grains can also be tempo synced for a bit more predictability. In here you've also got an attack release envelope that helps round off the edges. And a built-in multi-mode filter with controls over cutoff frequency and resonance, as you might expect. To help make sure that your sounds don't end up too static, there are 2 built-in modulators which let you assign LFOs with different shapes to various parameters. Gluing everything together, we've got a shimmer reverb with 6 different stereo modes, including hall, plate, tunnel, etc, etc, etc. Now whilst the built-in presets are great, the real magic of this thing is of course in sampling your own sounds. Recording into the Texture Lab is dead easy and it takes just a few button presses. The maximum sample time is 6 seconds and I believe is mono only. You aren't limited to sampling it via the line input though, as you can also resample internally, which is a pretty neat addition. Alternatively, there is also a web tool that you can use to convert WAV files, which can then be transferred to the Texture Lab via sysx commands, I think. Now this is a nice touch, but I haven't bothered using it personally, as that can be a bit slow. Sysx tends to be a bit slower than just, you know, transferring a WAV onto an SD card or something, and the sampling process is so straightforward that I haven't felt the need. For sample storage, there are 32 slots available, though be aware that 16 of those are already occupied by the included presets. Now these can be overwritten, but then you obviously lose the presets, and restoring the device to factory settings doesn't restore the original samples, interestingly enough. However, you can download these from the Sonicware website. In addition to plain stored samples, the Texture Lab can also be used as a stereo effects box, applying real-time granular processing to the incoming audio from the line input. Foolishness aside, this is actually a really nice feature and it turns the Texture Lab into something of a standalone mutable clouds type processor, which is pretty cool. Now the Texture Lab has got a built-in sequencer, and at first when I heard this I was kind of like, aye, great, okay, another sequencer, you know what I mean? There's so many devices out there that seem to have sequencers just because they, I don't know, they maybe feel like they have to or something like that. Speaking personally, I would usually much rather just sequence from an external device like the Oxy One. However, the sequencer that is built into the Texture Lab is actually surprisingly capable. You get a total of 128 steps, which can be sequenced using a variety of different modes, and you can also apply parameter locks per step, or indeed record parameter changes in real time. When you combine this with all of the various granular options, it opens up quite a lot of pretty cool possibilities in a much more convenient way than if you were to use an external sequencer with MIDI CC values and all of that. In my experience, the Texture Lab initially seems pretty straightforward, and in some respects I guess it is. However, it was very much a device that rewards you for putting some time in. There is a fair amount of depth in there underneath the simple controls, and it can take a wee bit of effort to get your head around how they work and to find the sweet spots. I think it's really easy to overlook the fact that the Texture Lab can also be used just as a standard 4-voice sampler with fairly extensive controls over pitch and speed. And in of itself, that is, you know, pretty awesome.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1.
With that said, in my opinion, where this especially shines is in the creation of big smeary pads. And some of my best results so far have come from sampling in just a single note from one of my synthesizers and having that turn into something beautifully haunting. There is something really cool about being able to take pretty much any kind of sound, dial into a wee tiny portion of it and create something else entirely. And I guess ultimately that is really key to the beauty of granular synthesis. In conclusion, the Live and Texture Lab provides access to hardware granular synthesis in an affordable portable package. Compared to software, having all of the different controls and parameters broken out across a bunch of knobs is far more satisfying, at least for me, and there's a bunch of features in there that I have barely scratched the surface of. For just over £200, it's kind of difficult to argue with. Thanks for watching. Like usual, I have no idea how to finish this video, and so...